So Jess Walters, who uses they, them pronouns, is a mixed media artist, disability justice advocate, and independent scholar from Charlottesville, Virginia. As one of the inaugural Virginia Health Equity and Justice Fellows, in collaboration with the UVA Center for Health Humanities and Ethics, Virginia Humanities, and the UVA Health Office of Diversity and Community Engagement, Jess is working to assess and improve accessibility accommodations in creative art spaces throughout Charlottesville. They also served as the vice chair on the board of directors at the Bridge Progressive Arts Initiative and have exhibited artwork at the Virginia Museum of History and Culture, 2nd Street Gallery, and New City Arts. As a deaf and disabled, multiply neurodivergent queer person, Jess brings a unique perspective to their creative practice and collaborative endeavors exploring the intersections of art and health. Welcome, Jess.
Wow. Okay, so hi, everyone. My name is Jess Walters, and for the folks that will be viewing this video online later on, I'm going to give myself a quick image description. I'm wearing some brand new, really rad overalls that have doodles on them with a white background. I also am wearing a pink Jelly M1 mask, which is clear so that you can see my face and read my lips. And I have pink glasses and short brown curly hair, and I am a white person. I did that image description, and you are all wearing masks in this space today as an act of love. And I say that as a disabled person who is often faced with so many barriers to accessing not only creative spaces, but everyday spaces. And the perspective that I have taken as a disability justice advocate is one that speaks to radical acts of love in showing up for each other, in caring for each other, and respecting the intersectional identities that come with that. I would like to teach you a sign, because I am a deaf person and I am fluent in American Sign Language. Even though it is not my native language, it is my natural language. And so if everybody would put 2 fingers, and then with your other hand, 1 finger, and angle your palm orientation down of your 2-fingered hand towards the 1 finger. And when you do a movement, like toward that 1 finger or around that 1 finger, this is the sign for perspective. And it's one of my favorite signs because you shift your perspective. And when you shift your perspective, you're really looking introspective. Because in order to understand or meet anyone else where they are, you have to recognize what we bring with us to the table and what all of our experiences have brought up to that moment. So I just would like to take you on a journey of a couple of moments in my life that have brought me up to this point. So I'm 16 years old, and I'm in a hospital. I had just moved to Virginia, and I'm meeting a nephrologist, which is a fancy word for kidney doctor, for the first time, and he is diagnosing me with Alport syndrome. Alport syndrome is a diagnosis you'll probably never hear again. I might be the only one with Alport syndrome that you will meet. It is a rare genetic condition that day I learned causes deafness and kidney failure. So I'm 16 years old, and this doctor is telling me that I have 24 years left to live, and that in that time, I'll probably go deaf. Perspective shift. But I was 16 years old, so I didn't really know what to do with that information. I was pretty apathetic because the perspective of deafness that I had experienced up to that point was pretty negative. I had already been given hearing aids because I was told I failed a hearing test. And my hearing aids were supposed to fix that lacking and that loss. But what I experienced in adolescence was admittedly different from that. I struggled as a hearing person as a deaf person using hearing aids in an environment with hearing people who assumed that with these devices I could hear perfectly. That's a huge misconception. It's a lot of work to hear, even with hearing devices. But that brings me to a point where I am 22 years old, and I'm enrolled at Piedmont, Virginia Community College, taking my first ASL class, relatively apathetically. But what's radical is I met a deaf person for the first time. I'm 22 years old, have been deaf since I was at least 13, but the first time I get to meet another deaf adult is 22, and she's my ASL teacher in this classroom. She put me on my ass about everything that I did not know about deaf culture. Up until that point, I was completely ignorant. I didn't know that there was this whole, rich history. I didn't know that sign language was anything other than, I didn't know that sign language was its own language, that it wasn't just some visual representation of spoken English. There's grammar, there's syntax. And I had that opportunity to dive all in. I found the freedom and the space to have a deaf identity, which was something that had never been offered to me before. It's something that is often not offered to most children who are born deaf and hard of hearing. But it shifted the way that I saw myself in the world. It shifted the way that I responded to the world, and suddenly learning sign became the most important thing. And studying how people learn language and how people communicate and how people connect became the penultimate special interest in my life. And I started diving into developmental psycholinguistics for the nerds out there who like to classify things. So I fast forward to, I'm 27 years old, and I am recently accepted at Gallaudet University, which is the only deaf liberal arts college in the United States. And I moved to DC where the summer before my class started, and I meet peers, people that are not my teachers, who are the same age as me, who get to interact and engage, and sign language is everywhere. And it's the first place that I feel like I have the freedom to just be myself. I don't have to act hearing. I don't have to keep up with conversation. I remember going to this party and looking around the room, and it's any kind of college level party. People are just, drinking, talking, smoking, hanging out. It's nothing formal, it's so casual. But I just start crying in this space because I'm looking around and no one is left out. There's people of all abilities there. There's hearing people, there's deaf, they're all signing, they're all communicating. There's captions on the rap music playing on the TV screen that everybody's dancing to. And the kid with CP has two people helping him get down the stairs. And it's no question. It's automatic. That care, that love. But I have Alport syndrome still. So I'm participating in a clinical trial at the same time, and I found out that the kidney failure came a little earlier than anybody anticipated. And so at 27 years old, I moved back to Charlottesville. I defer from my program, and I come here to start dialysis, tell everybody I know that I'm slowly dying of kidney failure, and beg for an opportunity for someone to save my life with a transplant. So it's 2 days after my 29th birthday, and I'm waking up on the 4th floor post-surgical ICU at UVA with a new kidney from a living donor, someone that I had known my whole life, who decided to step in and give me a second chance. But more than just giving me an organ, I struggle with the words because there aren't words. There is an ultimate love that goes beyond meaning, that goes beyond interpersonal connection, and like when somebody takes out their organ and gives it to you, you kind of get to tap into that. And I feel like it's my job to just kind of be that and get it out and tell y'all about it the best way that I can with words or signs or just my story. But what I learned is that we need each other. Like, one kidney will swell up and function at the capacity of 98% of what 2 kidneys can do in a week. It takes a week for one kidney to bounce back. It's almost like our bodies were designed to share with each other. And it's such a beautiful biological thing that I just can't stop thinking about. But the transplant, my second chance at life, none of that would have been possible, yes, for my donor, but also in the ways that my community showed up. Complete strangers, people I didn't know, they donated money, they donated clothes, they showed up for food. Like, it had such a tremendous effect. And that work of care changed me. It changes people who have the opportunity to receive it. And it kind of makes me feel like I hope it doesn't take kidney failure for the people in this room to experience that perspective shift of understanding, like, implicitly how interdependent our lives are. Every human has needs. It is human to have needs. The way that we can show up for each other to meet those needs requires a perspective shift. So since I started coming out as an artist, as a creative person, I really started noticing that we leave a lot of people out. There's so many voices that don't get the opportunity to share their perspective because there are physical barriers. If you close your eyes and think in your spaces, like, how many times have you had an interpreter in a meeting or an audience? How many times have you provided image descriptions on your captions on your social media? How many spaces do you walk into that have no ramps or wheelchair accessibility on the doors? These are what I call barriers to belonging. They're spaces that upon entering, you recognize that they're not for you. They're not built to accommodate you. They assume that you don't belong in that space. Tapping into my creativity saved my life in a number of ways. And I think that not including the voices of deaf, disabled, neurodivergent, chronically ill folks, it's a lose-lose situation, because not only do this population that I belong to, not only do we not get to participate, but the larger community doesn't get those stories, those perspectives, those experiences. And disabled people are the most creative people because we have to creatively navigate a world that is not built for us every day. And so I invite you to try to tap into that creativity, because self-advocacy is exhausting, and we need our able-bodied allies to have that perspective, to seek that love, to do that care work with us so that we can truly be a community that feels belonging. we'll have a lot of notes. Bye. So with that, I would like to ask you, what would it look like if we had the tools? What would it look like if we had the funds, the access, the knowledge on how to make access not an afterthought? And so I have an activity for you all to engage in to explore that idea. I make zines as a large part of my creative practice, and so I made an activity zine for everyone to have today. This is my partner Ian, who's going to help me demonstrate how to do this. But Steve, if you could hand me that pile of colorful paper next to you, and if you would split that with Jeremy and pass them out. I'm making you work. So the zine is called Exchanging Perspectives, and I literally want you to exchange them with somebody. So I invite you to be vulnerable, but not so vulnerable that you feel uncomfortable. When I learned how to make this style of zine, it kind of changed my life because I really love how one piece of paper can turn into something magic. And I say magic because I've seen change happen with a single zine. So first I'm going to teach you all how to fold a piece of paper into an 8-page book, and then I'm going to invite you to write on it. So we are going to take our paper and we're going to fold it in half, hamburger style.
Good crisp crease on that. One.
And then we're going to open it up again. And we're going to turn it this way. And we're going to fold it hot dog style. And if you want to refine the lines, I have foam folders on the desk over here. If you want to make it super crisp later. I intend that, I'm done talking now, so we can all move around the space when we're done folding. But, all right, we have 2 folds. Now we are going to take the rightmost side and fold it into the centermost crease like a half hamburger.
Half hamburger.
And then we're going to do the same thing on the other side and make another half hamburger.
Turning it into sliders.
Stop.
Now's when they need scissors.
Oh,
right?
dude, yeah.
They're gonna pass the scissors.
Yeah, you get with Jeremy. There's 2 cups of scissors, so go down the middle.
Do not rub it.
Don't run with scissors. We're going to go back to our hamburger.
More scissors coming around. Once you're done with your scissors, pass them on to the next person if you will.
All right. So once we have our scissors, we're going to fold it in half again, hamburger style. And we're going to take the folded edge. We're going to cut the folded edge just past the center crease. So you make a little Pac-Man. You want a Pac-Man. On the folded edge into just past the middle. So we have a talking
Pac-Man. Anybody need scissors?
Do you want to do a Q&A, and should we do it before everyone gets up?
Probably. Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry.
No, it's fine. I did not think about that. Yeah.
But we can either, I don't know. I don't know when. Whenever you think makes
Okay,
sense.
let me get people so that they have a book.
Yes.
Okay. Now, everybody have a cut? Cool. So, just above your cut, like where your Pac-Man is, squish these corners and try to, oh, it's not being trending, sorry. These corners come in on each other. I'm sorry, this is not.
So do hot dog fold, okay? And then go like that. And then you get this cool little thing that has the comic book.
The part that says exchanging perspectives is the front, and all the writing is on the back.
If anybody needs help, we come around and help you.
Yeah, we can help.
Ask your neighbors if they've got it figured out and you don't. That's what you do. Do I need to pass out pens?
No, I'm gonna talk at him for a second. Does everybody have a booklet now? Does anybody need help? Yay! Congratulations, you all made your first zine! Zines are really big in the disability justice movement because they're very accessible. Most folks have paper and pens laying about. A lot of us work for companies with printers that we can steal toner from. And generally speaking, it's pretty simple to put whatever you want in a little booklet and just share ideas. Ta-da! It's beautiful. So I created this Exchanging Perspectives zine because every single person has unique gifts to offer the world. I believe we are all resources to each other. And this zine is meant to be shared. The pages on it ask you to share your axes of identity. So on the first page, I would probably write, like, I'm disabled, I'm deaf, I'm non-binary. A gift that I uniquely bring to the world is my art and my love for zines. As for the principles of disability justice, I made some printouts for y'all to just kind of learn about the 10 principles of disability justice because I think that they're very important. I would ask you to explore these, think about them, and think about the ways that you each identify like how they affect your life and the lives of the other people that you love. My favorite resource to share with others, I actually brought one of my favorites with me, and this is kind of like the Disability Justice Bible. It's called Care Work, Dreaming Disability Justice by Leah Lakshmi, and it's one of my favorite reads. I highly encourage it. And this last one asks you to contemplate a physical barrier to access that you have in your own work, in your own life, and then think about a way that changes could be made. And the last page of the zine is really just a shout out to the folks who made it possible, as well as my contact information. I offer myself as a resource to anyone in this room who wants me to share my story to another group or is interested in my art or collaborations. In my role as Health Equity Justice Fellow at the School of Medicine, I'm really trying to make it my priority to bring awareness to the community about these ideas and continue to collaborate with others on how to make creative spaces, but really any spaces, more accessible. And so the point of this zine is to share it and exchange it so that we can share those resources with each other. And so we will have time to fill these out. I have lots of pens and disability justice stuff over here, but Jeremy reminded me that we promised you Q&A time, so we'll do that now.
Yeah, so does anyone have any questions for Jess?
This is a loaded question. Jess, how is it that you share your story Like what mediums and all that kind of thing beyond this talk here today? What are you working towards now and in the future?
This is my collaborator, Steve, so I'm allowed to tell him to go away. But I consider myself a mixed media artist, and I use those words very vaguely. I'm actually currently working on a documentary that I've been working on for the last 5 years about my transplant experience. My donor and I have live footage of our surgical experience, and there's lots of footage of me using a dialysis catheter, which you can see in this photo of me that I brought. I brought some of my artwork over here if y'all wanted to look at it. I also have a show coming up in June at 2nd Street Gallery. There's a little poster over here if you want a sneak peek of some of the artwork that's being cultivated for that. We're also still seeking sponsorship if anyone feels so inclined. But I see no limits in ways that I try to share my story. There are some free zines for y'all to take. I do a lot of advocacy work, and there's bits of my story in that when I go like to the Hill, or most recently I went to speak to the National Academies of Science, Engineering, and Medicine, who were consulting with the Social Security Administration about how to address Medicare for chronically ill, non-binary, and gender non-conforming people, which is a mouthful, but that happened. Yeah, I hope that answers your question. Anyways. What's up, Jeremy?
So a lot of people in this room work for or volunteer at or attend arts organizations. I know making spaces more accessible is a journey. It takes a while. What's a really good place to start?
That is a really great question. And honestly, it is sort of the mission of my fellowship to understand how to answer that. One of my ultimate projects is a community resource guide, because I keep noticing that I'm the first deaf artist, or I'm the first autistic artist, or I'm the first person to ask about these accessibility things in a lot of the spaces that I go to. And I don't know how to find all these things are, and I need them. So I'm working on it. I'm working with some folks at UVA. I'm working with folks at the Bridge and folks at New City Arts to sort of find out like what services are available in our community. How do we contact them? I am finding resources like this one. It's called Disability Justice, an audit tool. There's a number of these sort of checklists that exist by disability justice folks, and I am looking into them, consolidating them, doing some interviews with some folks around town and trying to find out what are the needs of our specific community. And yeah, check back with me in February 2025.
Any other questions?
I appreciate what you're saying, and I feel like we all have a lot of identities, depending on the circumstance we're in, who we're interacting with. For example, I'm a dad, but I'm also a husband. I'm a creative person, right? My daughter has special needs, and she is often defined by her disability. And part of that is her identity, but it's not her complete identity. And so I'm wondering, from your perspective, how do you help others negotiate their perspective of you and how you're identifying or how you want to be identified? Because I find it's often a challenge to meet people at the place where it's a more accepting relationship.
That is the most loaded question I've been asked today. No, it's great. This is a thing that needs to be talked about and discussed. Identity is huge, right? Like it's how we move through the world. Standing in front of you and saying, I am a disabled person, I am an autistic person, I am a deaf person. It took me years to be able to say those things out loud, to sort of come out with those identities. I would equate it as coming out, like as a queer person, there's anxiety around it. And it's because
There is a long history of shame and stigma associated with disability. It is radical to exist in this world as a capital D disabled person. You have to get comfortable with other people perceiving you wrong. You have to get comfortable with other people expressing their bias around you. And I mean, I'm not saying take it or get thick skin. I'm just saying, like, understand that it's inevitable. Being a disabled person is living a life where you are misunderstood by the larger society. Since getting into this work, I've tried to chase down the question of why. Why do people hate disabled people so much? And it turns out it's a pretty simple answer. You know, in the 1900s, medical eugenics was a fad, but it was a very powerful fad. Ever since we've came up with this idea that there can be a perfect way to be, we've tried to condition ourselves to fall into what that line is. Being a disabled person, in my perspective, is embracing human diversity. It's acknowledging that you are different, but loving that about yourself. Practicing loving that about yourself. When I was a young person, I did not want to be deaf. I was terrified of being deaf. I was more afraid of deafness than I was of dying of kidney failure. But that's because of stigma. That's because I wasn't taught better. It's because I wasn't exposed to deaf people. It's because I wasn't exposed to deaf culture. And y'all, there's a reason that none of us know this history. It's erased. So you have to work for it. You have to kind of overcome it. Our access to accessibility is limited because it's only been the disabled people. And we get killed a lot systemically or as a result of suicide for how much we don't belong in this world. And like, I'd hate that that's the answer I have for you, but that's the answer I have for you. It's because it's hard. But everybody in this room just experienced a perspective shift. You can go out into the world believing that disabled people are really freaking cool. Believing that disabled people are some of the most creative people you know. Taking a sign language class, learning from a perspective of another person, of a population that you're unfamiliar with. And I can tell you from my experience, like, you'll continue to be grateful for it. And I'm not trying to threaten you, but able-bodiedness is temporary. You will all become disabled at some point in your life. Yeah. No, so, I mean, be grateful that you get to contemplate disabled identity now, so that you don't have to like swim to survive it later, maybe. But yeah, just learn. Exchange perspectives.
I think that's a great note to end the Q&A
Yeah.
on.
Makes sense.
Okay.
And thank you all for being here, like a lot. Creative Mornings, just as a group, means so much to me. It's been such a huge part of my creative journey and process, and I really love Creative Mornings. So even if this is your first time, please keep coming back. Please keep supporting this organization. Like, Creative Mornings needs to live on, because everyone is creative, and I truly believe that's true.